Well, we operate two farms. They're 34 miles apart, one in Kennebec County, one in Somerset County, and we have about 50 acres of apples at each farm.
We had some kids at the farm, my sister told me about this, too young, they were probably 18 or 19, walked in and kid was heading up to spray up in the organic block, and they freaked out because we were spraying in the organic block.
For consumers, I think there's a lot of confusion as to what it actually means. And I've worked for MOFGA for almost 8 years now, and I've worked and managed certified organic operations. So I'm pretty well aware of what it actually means to be a certified organic farm. And I think that, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people would think it's a no spray situation, or sometimes I'm not even sure when you meet people what they actually think. They just think that immediately organic is better for one reason or another.
The question they ask first is this organic? And if I say, no, it's not, but I'm using integrated pest management and blah, 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 they don't want to hear it. All they want to know is it organic or is it not organic?
Right.
So that, in my mind, is a consumer who has closed his or her mind too soon.
What first comes to mind for me is organic. I think about farming systems initially, and farming systems that are trying to mimic nature of the natural world as much as possible. The USDA in their National Organic Program sets the rule, and that's the rule that everybody in the country has to follow. MOFGA is an accredited certification or certifying agency. So they are kind of approved by the USDA to certify farms as organic. So MOFGA is following, when they conduct inspections, MOFGA is following the USDA rule. And that started in 2002. So prior to that, MOFGA had kind of their own rules, so to speak, starting in the 70s. So that all changed in 2002 when the NOP came into play. At the time, a lot of people were farming organically because that was their philosophy, their ethical system, and just how they believed things should be. And once the USDA and the government got involved, that didn't really fit with their beliefs so much. So they continued to farm, and there are people that are farming organically that could be certified but choose not to for philosophical reasons. So on the consumer side, I really don't know what people are thinking. Some people are aware, some people are educated, some people take a knee-jerk reaction, I think, just thinking that organic is better. But I think there's kind of maybe like a misconception about what actually happens on the farm. A lot of the images are just, you know, beautiful flowers or green pastures and animals loping around, and that is the case in a lot of places, but it's not the case everywhere. When I manage the orchards at MOFGA, I spray various things to combat bugs. I also spray various things to try to build the nutrition in the trees and in the soil. But not every spray application is out there to kill something. So there are the products that you're trying to kill things, there's products you're trying to prevent things, and there's products where you're trying to boost the health of the whole system. And when I give talks about orchards, I try to intentionally use the word pesticide because things like Dipel and Entrust or the spinosad products are pesticides, and they are used and allowed in organic situations.
So the thing that comes up first and foremost is the term carbon-based. Yeah, so thinking about being a chemist, that's the first thing. And I automatically think of the contrast being inorganic or salts typically. If you want organic apples, you can use copper-based things, which is cool because that's an inorganic additive to an organic apple. So
That's
now
really
you're confusing the terms, but in this case it works really well. Another definition of organic could be something that just comes up naturally, right? It organically happened, right? Our business just welled up from our own interest organically based on what we were interested in. And all of a sudden, boom, we started something, right? And so the idea of having paperwork or regulations to define the same term seems like there's a duality, if not a contrast between them.
Organic for me has to do with the context in which someone's using it. So without that, organic for me, what comes to mind is really old-fashioned ways of being before a label organic was implemented around agriculture. When I'm making that choice around food, I want to buy the organic one, even if there is a price difference. I'm not crazy about that, but even if there is a price difference, because it means that I'm getting more nutrients or more vitamins. It's being grown in compost-enriched soils. It hasn't been treated synthetically. I'm also hoping and imagining that there is a better ecological balance with pests. I don't like to be so narrowly focused that that I exclude that other end of the spectrum, which is the big guns, right, the chemicals. But between doing nothing and then having chemicals, there's a whole repertoire in between, and I like having that repertoire of tools and being open to it. So it's about health, hugely about health, and it's hugely about care of the earth.
I think that the difference between organic and conventional is not as radical as we might be led to believe. A growing system that uses only naturally occurring products as for pest control, in other words, no synthetic materials.
But it's more than that. It's also taking into consideration soil. But then that negates non-organic growers because they do the same thing. And I think that's where the dichotomy, where the split happens, is that all growers have to do that. If you're a grower of anything, you need to know what the soil does.
One of the myths that seems to be fairly prevalent is that organic farming means no spraying. And this is probably furthest thing from the truth, because at least in apple growing, it probably means more spraying, but you can only use naturally occurring materials. They're more expensive and they need to be applied in, more often. So there's organic growing seems to be more labor intensive, and a farmer could be using 99% organic practices, but if he uses some non-organic material on 1%, then he is not organic, so.
And it's painted with the brush of being bad as opposed to good. I mean, there's this halo over organics that there isn't over conventional agriculture, because it's an attempt to be less intrusive in the environment. But that's being said, there's nothing more disruptive than growing things. Whether it be done organically or not, you're tilling up soil, you're killing bugs, you're planting things that don't belong there. It's totally disruptive. But as I tell people in the gardens, part of the reason I wouldn't certify them either is if I were going to lose the whole crop and I could spray something, it would be like going to a hospital and having them say, well, I do surgery on that tumor, but I don't do surgery because I don't think it's ethical. And so you're going to die, too bad. So I've got a whole crop out there and I could go out once and spray it with 7 or whatever. and save the whole crop and have a crop, have food to sell to people, what is better? Honest to God, I think spraying the 7 is better. You know? But if people are concerned enough about it, then you grow for the customers. And that's why we're growing organically in that orchard. Plus, it's a place to experiment with those kinds of methods to see how it works.
It doesn't work very well in apples.
In apples.
We don't generally make money growing 12 acres of organic apples. Most years we lose money, but we continue to do it.
You need to be careful with what you use, but you also need to be careful not to overdo the fear part of it and teach people that, farmers are trying their best to do the best they can.